freetrial.com/paranormally, you can get a free audiobook, a free month's membership, cancel at any time. Audiobook is yours to keep.
Yep.
It is absolutely worth checking out. And again, what do you got to lose? It's free.
Exactly.
And it helps out the show, of course. So, folks, we're doing tonight's topic for two reasons, really. Partly is, yes, we want to, again, because of the wonderful world of me, as it were. But partly because I've had some people asking, either via private messages or in a comment, okay, who is this guy? Why should we listen to him? Which is a fair question. Never mistake me on that.
Yeah.
The other reason, of course, is that, and we now have a tentative date. Hopefully, some of my potential students are already listening in. But starting either May 25th, so the last Saturday of the month, or June 1st, which will be the first Saturday of the next month, we are going to be teaching a weekly course in demonology and paranormal investigation here, in fact.
Well, you're going to be teaching the course.
Yeah, true.
I might be there once in a while, just to observe, but I'm not teaching.
I may drag you in for some of the folklore segments.
Okay.
But it's going to be a very large, comprehensive course. We're going to talk about that a little later in the show.
The other reason is Kevin just loves talking about himself.
Yeah. Those of you who may be interested, you can find us by looking up Ghost Hunting and Demonology on Facebook or on Meetup. I'll have links in the description to both of those places, so you can check us out. You can join the Facebook group. You can join the Meetup group. It's free to join. The classes are going to be $20 a person, except the very first class is actually only going to be $10 to convince you all to join this crazy, wackety ride that it's going to be.
Yeah, get a chance to sample it.
Yeah. Those of you who do not live in New Jersey, because I know we have listeners all over the place, do still join the group, still reach out to us. Email's also in the description. We are going to be setting up to do a live stream, so you can still hear the class live. We'll have a chat going and somebody monitoring the chat, so you can ask questions. So you'll still have that option there. If you're really excited by the whole thing, you want to buy the whole 30 class course, we're offering a discount on that as well. If you want to buy blocks at a time, contact me. We'll work things out. Whole thing should be pretty cool. But before we get into what that's all going to cover and what, we should get into who the heck I am and why anyone should listen to what I have to say on the subject.
Sure.
And all joking aside, it's a legitimate question because there's a lot of people out there that claim to be experts on demonology or ghost hunting. Some of whom are very competent. I would not consider myself the best person in this field by any means. In fairness, I would, with less modesty than perhaps I should have, I would probably put myself within the top 10 in the United States. Specifically for demonology. For I'm not a parapsychologist, and we can get into that too. And certainly for lay demonologists, because we're very uncommon. Most demonologists are priests. But at any rate, my name's Kevin Mears. I have been a demonologist for 20 years. More than that, actually. I am 42 now. I first formally started studying the subject when I was 18. And this is, keep in mind, I started studying demonology as a subject at 18. Before that, I spent most of my life studying ghosts, vampires, werewolves, mythology, folklore, religion. I spent years reading everything I could on the subject because when I was a kid, I found ghosts fascinating, but I didn't know anybody who was a ghost hunter. All I had was myself, a Polaroid camera, and what I could figure out on my own. And, over time, I read more and more in college. I saw Anne Lorraine Warren do a lecture at my college, which helped turn me more specifically towards demonology. And then late 90s, I hit a rough patch. I fell out of college because of dumb mistakes I made. I'm not going to blame anyone other than myself. Yeah, my voice does sound off today, doesn't it?
A little scratchy.
I don't know. Eric in the chat commented. I don't know why, Eric, but I've noticed it, and as is Brian. But anyway, I was commenting on I had come back to New Hope, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up, which is a great place if you're interested in ghosts, because everything in that town is haunted. But I come back there, and I was looking to find out more. And I started posting on message boards, and there's a group, Philadelphia Association for Critical Thinking, FACT. And I was posting on their message board, strangely enough, despite the fact that it's a group of skeptics and disbelievers, because people were asking about, well, I think my house is haunted, what should I do about it? And I was trying to tell them what to do as best as I could from years of reading. And I get this email. Hey, you kind of seem to know what you're doing. My name's Lou Gentili. Would you like to maybe work with me? I'm like, okay, who's Lou Gentili? And, found out a little bit more about him, that he was a student of Ed Warren, I mean, specifically. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. And I started, we corresponded for a while. I wound up doing a case with one of his side investigators in New Jersey. Actually, I even want to say before I actually physically met Lou, bizarrely enough. And then eventually Lou and I would meet at the Barnes & Noble in Oxford Valley. It was raining, I remember distinctly, because he ran out of gas. So I had to go. We were supposed to meet at the Barnes & Noble. I'm sitting at the Barnes & Noble waiting, and I get this message, hey, I ran out of gas. Could you come pick me up?
Nice. So what was the case that you did before you actually met him?
So the first case I ever did for Delaware Valley Demonology Research, the group that Lou ran that I've since taken over, and Eric makes an excellent point, and I'll come back to that. But it was a case in northern Jersey just off of a military base. The whole situation was weird because you had this house just off of a military base. The father of the family was a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't remember which because it's been 20 years, almost 20 years.
Yeah, well, the difference is a medical degree. One can prescribe medication, the other one can't.
Yeah, I know what the difference is. I just forget what she was.
Yeah.
Though of course, you're absolutely right. But he wasn't in the Army, but he worked for the Army in some very vague capacity. Then you had his wife, his children, and you had a guy who was about to enlist in the Army who wasn't related to any of them that lived in the house for reasons that were never properly explored. But
he's just there.
Yeah, like I said, this was a weird case. We're sitting, and I'm asked both by Lou and by the other guy I'm with to spend some time alone in the house. The traditional rite of passage for a ghost hunter, at least in the groups I'm aware of, is we're going to take you somewhere haunted. We're going to stick you by yourself for an hour, and we're going to see what happens. And mostly this is usually a let's see if you freak the hell out. And the reality is people do. A lot of people don't. Some people do. But they set this up, and I'm sitting in the one bedroom on a chair that's all the way up against the wall. And it's pitch black. Not only is it pitch black insofar as the lights are all turned off, the power to the entire second floor is cut off. Because I'm using an EMF detector, and it's like, well, you don't want anything that has electricity screwing with it. And I'm sitting there waiting for something to happen. And let me tell you, folks, especially those of you considering taking the class, 90% of paranormal investigation is sitting on your rear end waiting for something to happen.
Kind of like detective work.
Oh, very much, yes.
I used to know a private eye.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing from private eyes as well. It's very much the same. You're sitting waiting for something to happen. And I assume it's true for private eyes as well. Often nothing happens. And sometimes you can spend days, weeks even, sitting in the same house. And you're sure there's something there. You get that intuition that there is, but nothing's happening. It gets really tedious, trust me. It's even more tedious when it's a cold, wet night and you're sitting in a cemetery waiting for something to happen.
Oh, God.
And I've done that, too.
That's why I wouldn't be a paranormal investigator.
Well, then you freak the heck out. And
That I would, yeah.
see,
Ghosts would freak me
you
out.
probably wouldn't pass the rite of passage of we're going to sit you in a cemetery by yourself in the dark and see what happens.
Nope.
And I think 15 minutes you'd be running.
15 minutes, I'd be like, all right, screw this.
And that's okay. This isn't something everyone's cut out for. I like to poke a little fun at you for this because despite that, here you are.
Mm.
But there's nothing to be ashamed about if this is not for you,
I'm interested in the intellectual side of it.
which is also fair.
I mean, you have. I will say, all joking aside, you have one of the more impressive memories I've ever encountered, as far as just why you're nicknamed the Paranormal Encyclopedia is just the ridiculous amounts of trivia and facts and whatnot that he has committed to memory. That just when I listen to him talk, that's.
And one of our frequent listeners, Eric, made the excellent point that he'd get bored and wind up watching Netflix. Yeah, that's true. I started doing a lot of this back before phones. Well, phones were a thing by the 90s, but internet on your phone was not a thing.
Yeah,
it was a cheap flip phone.
Yeah, you weren't watching.
Heck, the internet wasn't what it is now. This is the late
No,
90s.
the internet was AOL and.
Which is, so with this case, because there's some more interesting that happens. So I'm sitting in the seat, and I start hearing the snarling noise coming from directly behind me. And I look, and it's like, no, the chair's directly against the wall. A family dog is there. And it stops, and I'm sitting there like, okay, something's here. And I take the flashlight I have, because the other thing I hear, and I keep hearing, is skitter, skitter, skitter. Skitter, skitter, skitter. And there's a cage, not a cage, like an aquarium on the side of me. And it's not a fish aquarium, it's wood chips. Terrarium, I guess.
Yeah.
See, this is why I keep you around. You remember names I don't. There's so many paranormal facts stuck up here, the normal things.
I got to be good for something,
Comic relief.
Once in a while.
You ask good questions. And it's good to have the more skeptical mindset that you and Chris bring.
Mm.
In all seriousness. But skitter, 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 skitter. I keep shining the flashlight at the terrarium to see what the devil's in there. And then finally I see it. It's a big, like, that big black scorpion that the kid had as a pet. I'm like, okay.
I know some people, I don't understand keeping things like that as pets.
So as I understand it, and I didn't know this at the time, the bigger ones aren't the ones to worry about. It's the small ones that are very deadly.
Not the poison factor. It's just the fact that, I don't know, generally as a pet you want something that's going to show you some sort of affection, and arachnids are not known for their ability to.
But it is really cool. You have to give it that.
I guess there's that sort of macho kind of factor.
But there's
to
the particular thing that happened on this case, and this is very interesting for a first time out on a real case. Because we're sitting on the bed. Now, the wife has been telling us about how she'll hear these voices when she's laying in bed, and that will threaten her and make various insulting names and things of that nature. And we're doing EVP, and I had never done EVP at this point. We've got a digital recorder, and I do have one of them. It will be with me at class, and we'll play around with it. We've played around with it on the show. We should do that again. And we started asking questions, and we're sitting in the pitch black. And there's a light on it, and light goes on when it's, it flashes when it's recording, when it's just running, and then it stays steady if it's recording something. But we noticed that it looks like the light's moving back and forth, back and forth. So it's like we shine the flashlight on it, and it goes from being set like that, maybe 3 or 4 inches from the edge, to like that, where the tip's right on the edge of the dresser. It's like, okay. And we start taunting the spirit a little. It's like, you didn't move it. Something else happened. You couldn't do it again. And we didn't. But when we play it back, we hear this voice. And it says, and forgive me for anyone who's sensitive, but it says, and I quote, "You fucking bitch, you fucking whore." Now, a lot of people in the audience have probably heard EVP before. And it usually sounds like, and you're trying to piece together what that said. No. This is as clearly as I'm speaking right now.
Hmm.
in a distinctly male voice.
And this was something you didn't hear
No,
audibly. It
that's
only came.
exactly. This is what I mean about the good questions. Yes, you're
Yeah.
exactly right. We didn't hear it. It only got picked up by the recorder.
Hmm.
Um, and then that was about the end of that night. We went home, did a few more, went there a few more times, had a bunch more weird things happen. Kind of turned into one of the. There are certain cases. There are people, mostly deliverance ministers, to tie into last week's, that'll tell you they can get rid of every demon they come across. Nobody can do that. So if somebody really wants a demon in their life, there's nothing you can do about it.
Hmm.
This family was a case like that. We don't know for sure, but there was good evidence at least one or more people in the house was practicing black magic.
Okay.
Probably at least two, actually.
Oh.
And that's what was causing the problem.
So it was not. It wasn't something that you were that
Eh,
you were able to solve in the end.
no. And there's a lot of cases in my career that have been like that, where it's like, there's nothing we can do. If somebody, like I said, if somebody wants a demon, they're going to have a demon. But eventually, I got to know Lou really very, very well. I did a number more cases with him. And then we had the very interesting experience that sort of leads us here.
Okay.
So Lou and I are sitting in his basement one night. He lived in Northeast Philadelphia, and he had by then he was doing a radio show. He did a nationally syndicated radio show called the Lou Gentili Show. You can still find bits and pieces of it on the internet. If anybody's interested and you go to YouTube, for that matter, you can find the Lou Gentili Show Amityville Horror Week, and find tons of them.
Right. You've mentioned that one.
From this week that we did in Amityville, including some of the people that were originally there in the house. But anyway, we're sitting there, we're just hanging out, we're talking. I'm getting ready to head home. He's going to do the show. He's like, well, why don't you stick around and we'll see what happens. So the show started, I want to say, at midnight at the time. Because we changed the time over the course of the show, because we did it for years. What was supposed to be a 2-hour show ran 6 hours. We looked at each other and went, okay, let's do this thing. And that's how I got into radio. That's what brings us here, and why I'm doing this now is as a lark, hey, let's see what happens. We had a massive success. I mean, at the heyday, the show was incredibly popular. When Art Bell originally retired, for those of you old enough to remember who Art Bell is, people were floating a rumor we were going to take his place running coast to coast. Of course, this didn't happen. Whitley Strieber did.
Yeah.
Then Strieber retired and Art Bell came back, and the whole kerfuffle there. But we had an amazing run. We had Bruce Campbell, the famous actor. We had George and Kathy Lutz. We had Chris Lutz, one of the three kids. It's the only interview he ever gave to the best of my knowledge. We had, I forget the lady's name. You might know. There's a woman, they call her, in Hollywood, they call her the Vampire Lady. She was in like 3 of the 4 Bloodstone movies.
Oh. The Full Moon movies?
The Bloodstone subspecies.
Subspecies, yeah. Denise Duff?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
She was a very lovely lady.
Yeah, she seemed very cool from like the behind the scenes stuff.
We had her on. We had Bigfoot experts, UFO experts, And the thing is, and people may wonder, if you haven't listened to the past shows where I've explained this, why I call myself the Paranormal Encyclopedia. This actually relates to why. See, back in the day when I did the show, Lou and I made fun of each other on the air relentlessly. And we have people who listen to this that listened to that back in the day. They can tell you. And one of the things Lou used to tease me about was that I was a walking encyclopedia. Because what Brian said about my memory and the fact that I remember all sorts of weird, random facts about the paranormal, about folklore, fantasy.
Yeah, especially like the stuff about the Bible,
And I can recall them on air. And it's one of the things Lou has said to me in the past, and said to others in the past, I'm somewhat proud of, is that on a research type, Lou had far more experience than I do now, realistically. He grew up in a house with a demon in it. But Lou would always say that if it comes to book, knowledge and research and study, if I said something, he wouldn't argue with me, because he knew I had done the homework. And when I decided 4 years ago, when I decided to start my YouTube channel, before we had the um, great people at Hamilton Radio here let us come into the studio and start doing it here.
Hmm.
Um, I had to come up with a name, and I'm like, Paranormal Encyclopedia. Partly because of the walking encyclopedia thing, and largely to do homage to my friend and mentor Lou. For those of you who don't, some of you may know him. He was on TV a whole bunch of times aside from his show. He did Fox Family Channel's Scariest Places on Earth. The last appearance he did, and this is one of the times you can actually see me on television, was a special with a UK skeptic by the name of Darren Brown.
Hmm.
He did Darren Brown Investigates the Ghost Hunter, and he came to the United States to work with Lou, and I actually got to be part of that. And that was very close, like within the last year before Lou passed away. If anyone's wondering, he died of cancer in Philadelphia, no less. But one of the things Lou, so this lead, and I'll get back more, but this actually is a good tie-in point because why am I doing this show? Why am I doing classes? People may wonder. One of the things Lou asked before he went was that I keep what he started going. He started DVDR. I took the mantle of running it when he passed, and I've been doing my best to help people. I was blessed enough to have another great mentor who also worked with Lou, who was Pastor Joseph Brose, who was an actual exorcist, who sadly also has passed much more recently. But to try to keep things going, and I always saw that attempt to keep things going partly as I go out and investigate and help people, but also as an educate people. Demonology is a very popular subject right now. There's a lot of TV shows. There's a lot of movies about it. You know, the Conjuring movies.
Yeah.
The Insidious movies deal with demons. TV shows, the Paranormal Activity has a demonologist in it. And you have all these things out there. And you have groups out. You go to Google and Google demonology. There's lots of groups out there claiming to be demonologists. Some are very good. There are, like I said, there are groups that I will flatly say are better than me. John Zaffis, operating out of Connecticut, is better than I am. And I've had the privilege of working with John. Tony Spira is basically taken over the mantle from Anne Lorraine now that Lorraine has passed. Knows what he's doing, and I have nothing negative to say about either man. But you know, I'm trying to leave my mark and try to help people the best I can, and part of that is getting accurate information into other people's hands.
Right.
And the other reality of that is, I'm 42. I'll be 43 in July. I'm not. You know, Lou was a year or two younger than I am now when he passed away. I'm not getting any younger. I have my own share of issues from time to time. I want to make sure that there are people, when I go, hopefully long from now, you know, don't think I'm getting into this depressing, I'm about to die type of thing. That's not my point. But when I go, may it be years from now, I want to be sure that there are people out there who know at least enough of what I know to keep things going, to keep helping people who need help, which is the point of doing these classes.
Right. Find somebody that you can kind of pass the torch to.
Or multiple people, really.
Or multiple people, yeah.
And there's also the realistic side, you know, DVDR could use new members. And, you know, if you're willing to come to the class and put in the work, I'm willing to talk to you about bringing you on. This isn't just I'm going to throw a lot of information at you and walk away, and that's the end of it. If you know, if you're coming in remotely, there are things we can talk about that on that way too.
Yeah. Satellite offices and whatnot.
Yep. Lou talked about that more than once before he passed away.
Yeah.
You know, I want to arm, and you know, to put it bluntly, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, and it's hardly a unique opinion among Christians in particular, there is a war going on between God and the devil. I want to arm people to fight. And that's the point of doing this. And, you know, the Bible says, and it's a great quote, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." Because that's another common and very fair question I get, which is, why do you focus so much on the evil? Why don't you talk more about God? And the answer is, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. There are too many people out there that don't know Yeah, Hosea 4:6. If anybody's wondering where, um, there are people out there that mean well, that don't know what they're doing, and get into serious trouble. Both spiritually, you can get hurt doing this. You can have something follow you home if you don't know what you're doing. You can get attacked. You can get physically attacked if you don't know, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And not only that, and this is something a lot of people, because I've run into groups before, and I'm not bad mouthing anybody for this. It's as good a reason as any, who see this on television and go, "I can do that," and that's fine. But there are certain legal and ethical considerations that you need to keep in mind, because depending on this, and I'm not a lawyer by any means, but depending on the state and the jurisdiction you live in,
Not a lawyer. This does not represent legal advice.
you can get into legal trouble for doing unethical things, like say sleeping with somebody who comes to you for help with something like this.
Oh God.
Yes, it happens. I'm not making up examples.
Oh, of course not. No, I can totally believe that
Well,
happens.
I believe you can believe it, but I want to say
Yeah.
for the listening audience as well, that things like this have been an issue before, and yeah, you can get in trouble. I mean, depending on jurisdiction, check with a lawyer. This can be considered a form of spiritual counseling, which means you're under all of the legal concerns a counselor's under, in terms of ethical obligation.
Yeah.
That's also why confidentiality is another big deal. You'll notice at no time when I talk about cases do I mention names, or if I do, I make them up, sometimes on the spot.
Which is fair.
Yeah, and I think most if not everyone who's listening understands that.
Yeah. So what was another case that you did? Maybe one where you had more of an effect.
There's a particular case. There's probably one of the ones where we had the clearest effect, which was actually after Lou died.
Oh.
Was what I did in Delaware. So one of the things I've done aside from investigate my own is occasionally, when other groups that are competent in because a lot of groups out there are very good at investigating ghosts. But they don't, if they're dealing with a violent haunting, they don't have any idea what to do. So they'll come to someone like me. I get asked exactly for this kind of situation in Delaware. So I bring Father Joe with me, because he was still alive at the time. And this is one of the funny things about Father, is when I show up to a case, I show up in a suit, tie, or at least a dress shirt and a tie. When he showed up to a case, he usually showed up in painter's overalls, covered in, splattered in paint, and looked like a mess. And this was no exception. But we're called to this house down in Delaware, where people are having these experiences. They'll see black shadowy forms walking around. They'll hear threats. They'll hear growling. And specifically, they all started playing with a Ouija board. And that's where the problem started. So we go down to this house. The other absolutely fun part, and this was a new one on me because it was legal as opposed to the other time, and I'll get back to that one. But they had a human skull. That they bought off of eBay or something to that. They bought it off. I don't know for sure if it was eBay. I may not have known it one time. I don't know for sure, but I do. It was some internet thing, and technically it's illegal to sell
human remains.
There's a workaround, which is spend $300 to buy this photograph of a skull and get with it a real skull, because you're not selling the skull, you're selling the photograph.
Wow. Nice.
And I thought we had a struggle. The first time I heard skull, it's like, oh crap, this is bad. In fact, it was a conversation starter type of situation. It wasn't actually part of the problem. I was surprised. But we set foot in this house, and the first distinct thing that happens is the family had decided, and I'm not generally a fan of this for liability reasons, that once we set up and were ready to go, they were going to go over to the neighbor's house, and they were going to be there while we did the investigation. While we're getting set up and they're getting ready to leave, one of the investigators is over by this walk-in closet with an EMF detector and it was a combination EMF and a thermometer, basically.
Okay.
And it starts going crazy. Like, there's a big EMF spike in the area. And the investigators are all, what's going on over there, and go walk over and check it out. Um, Meanwhile, father, and the other investigator of ours that we'd brought with us are like, this isn't good because family's freaking out. And you don't, whatever you do on a case, you don't want to freak out the family. So father just walks over, very nondescriptly sprinkles some holy water and says a silent prayer. All of a sudden, the EMF detector dies. Not like it stops working entirely, just huge signal to no signal at all. The rest of the night, we don't pick up a signal there. Also, lo and behold, literally right on the other side of that door is where the Ouija boards were. And the skull. Now, we actually happened to have with us an electrical engineer at the time. And we went later down into the basement, and he checked all through that area. Couldn't find a source of the signal we picked up.
Okay.
And while the EMF detector worked in other places, we never picked another signal up in that spot that night, which is interesting. The other part...
Whatever it was, GTFO'd.
Yeah. So we wander around the house a bit. And we're seeing lights moving around, but we're not having anything like, oh my gosh, happen. So it's about the end of the investigation. We're all sitting in the living room doing EVPs. We have recorders going. We have this new toy. I hadn't heard of it at the time. Although I now have added one to my collection. I will also be bringing this to classes, which is called the Spirit Box. Spirit Box scans through radio signals and spits out words. So we're sitting around and we're asking questions. And occasionally we get answers, but every time the circle of questions comes around to Father Joe, the answers are always expletives. And end of the night, I go to the family. We go up to the family because originally I was just introduced as another investigator. I say, okay, so here's the deal: you got a demon in your house, and the reason you have a demon in your house is there's 2 Ouija boards. What we need to do is we need to get rid of the boards. 9 times out of 10, that may fix your problem. If it isn't, let us know, and we'll come back. So I do a binding on the boards. We take them. We go dispose of them. We get the call. Yeah, it's still going on. We go down the next week, and that's when we fully unmasked Father Joe as a priest and exorcist. He did a house blessing, and they haven't had a problem there since.
Okay, nice.
And a lot of the time, people think of the big dramatic exorcisms like you see in the movies. A lot of the time, you just need a house blessing, believe it or not.
Right. Yeah, like you mentioned that last week.
And I don't recommend that that people that don't know what they're doing do house blessings if you think you have a problem, because if you do a house blessing and you don't know what you're doing, what are you going to do if something goes wrong? But you don't necessarily have to be a priest to do a house blessing. I've done them on cases before, I specifically, when I do it, I specifically use a Catholic house blessing that explicitly says it's permitted for lay people. Mm-hmm. And I've had that work too, and it works fine. Of course, the funny part, and I think it's worth telling the rest of the story.
Okay.
So we finished the house blessing, and we're stuck in Wilmington, Delaware at 10 o'clock at night. We've all driven about 2 hours. We've got nothing to do because the case is done, and we're hungry. So okay, we passed a diner on the way here. Why don't we go there and have dinner? Okay. We go to the diner. Now, you hear the word diner. You think of a big city like Wilmington. You expect it to be 24 hours. It was closed at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. It's okay.
Other places don't know what diners are. I'm just going to say that right now. I
agree.
As a native Jerseyan, yeah.
And all the problems with Jersey were good with our diners. It's there's a Burger King literally right next door. Burger Kings are open until 11. Not in Wilmington, Delaware. So the one guy's like, wait, down on the highway, there's a Buffalo Wild Wings. Follow me, I know the way. They moved the Wild Wings. But there's a restaurant there.
It was the cursed.
And the restaurant is open.
Ah.
I brought a priest to Hooters.
Nice.
Because it was the only thing we could find at 10 o'clock at night in Delaware that was open.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go out on a
He
limb
enjoyed
and
their
say,
hot wings, no less.
Yeah, I'm going to say it probably wasn't the first time that a priest went to Hooters.
Probably not. And as a point of clarification, when people hear me talk about Father Joe, he was Orthodox. He was not Roman Catholic. He was married. He has very great children, very great wife that survived him. Um, and before we keep going, we're past the 7 o'clock mark, so we should probably give out the phone number.
Yes.
You know, folks, if
Yeah,
you're
please call
listening
in with questions.
and you have questions, if you want to know more about me, I'm going to tell another story or two, and then we'll probably get into the class. 609-807-2492. 609-807-2492. So I'll kick off. I'll tell the story everyone wants to hear, which is the scariest experience you ever had.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to tell you guys the one I find the most disturbing, and then I'm going to tell you the funniest. Which still gets me every time. It was actually pretty recent. In fact, our producer was there.
Yeah, I know this story. Well, I know both these stories now but
so,
they're good.
The most disturbing case I ever did was when I did with Lou. Early in my career, this was still in the 90s. We get asked to do a case in western Pennsylvania. So it's about a 4-hour drive each way from Philly. It's out Pittsburgh area. We get out.
Pennsylvania's a big state.
We actually had 2 cases we were supposed to do, but we never got a hold of the one guy, so we wound up just working on the other, which was more than big enough by itself. Which is ironic, because we thought the one was nothing, and we thought the other one was going to be a big deal. He's talking about you could stand at the bottom of the stairs and throw pennies up to the top, and they come like something threw them back down. Kind of curious about that, because it's almost poltergeist stuff, but we never heard back from the guy. But this guy's telling us how he'll lay in bed at night and feel things walking around him on the bed. Poking, prodding, pinching, pulling hair, hands under his skin rubbing around. We had him lay down, and this I get flagged when I've talked to atheists because I want to see the video. And unfortunately, it's been 10 years. It's been well over 10 years. It's a little hard to run down. And his family isn't involved in this work anymore, so it's a little hard to get the video out of wherever they may have stored it. I don't think they even know. But we had him lay down on the bed.
Almost 20 years now, if it was the 90s.
Very late 90s, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
98, 99.
Yeah, but you figure that's that's almost 20 years now.
But, and oh god, the computers, it's probably saved on a computer somewhere, and the computers would be so out of date at this point.
Yeah.
But we have him lay down, we set up an infrared video camera in his bedroom. We run a feed to a monitor, and we're sitting there watching it. He says that the entities are there, and we watch the bed start to depress like something small, maybe the size of a cat, is walking across it. The thing is, whatever it is, despite being the size of a cat, is it's clearly not a cat because one, it's invisible. All we can see is the bed indenting. The other thing is it's 2-legged. Now, I sat in that room, I watched a bunch of things materialize. But the real kicker, and the reason this is so disturbing to me, it's not so much a jump scare moment, it's more the scare you have in a horror movie when you go home and you think about all the implications.
Yeah.
Because after a while of talking to this guy, we find out everything he's telling us didn't start with him. His wife was experiencing it. He wasn't, and he didn't believe her. He thought she was crazy. She goes to the priest. The priest doesn't believe her. He takes her to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist doesn't believe her. Finally, one night, she goes to a cabinet in the living room, takes out a handgun, drives to the grocery store where she works, puts the gun in her mouth, pulls the trigger. The next night, everything I described starts happening to him. This is the case that sticks with me. This is the reason I keep doing this. I don't want to see somebody else push to the point where they commit suicide. Or maybe a house blessing. Maybe even as little as a house blessing would have made a difference. And ultimately, yes, we had actually an exorcism performed there, which brought it to an end. But that's the stakes, folks. People have asked me before, why don't these things just up and kill people? The answer is they do. It gets written down on the coroner. It doesn't get written down as demon on the coroner's report. In this case, it got written down as suicide. But that woman was so twisted around by what was going on in her house she killed herself. And you can fairly, absolutely fairly say that everything I described, the pinching, the prodding, the feeling of a great weight settling on her in the night, and him as well, and being unable to move, all of that can be explained with sleep paralysis. Even with the husband starting to experience it after her death, could be explained by guilt.
Yeah.
But you can't videotape guilt.
Right.
And that's also the big difference between what I do, what I do, and some of the goofy groups out there. It's like, no. If I'm going to say you have something in your house, I need to see it. For one, rule one is I need to see it, and rule two is really I need to document it. But if I didn't see it, it didn't happen. As far as and that isn't to say that if I didn't see it, you're crazy, but show me. Eric in chat made the excellent point of a lot of demonologists are actually fairly skeptical, and it's true. When I walk into a house, despite what many people would think, my first assumption is not that the house is a demon, because there's lots of other things that could be going on, some of which are not paranormal, some of which are paranormal. And we're going to talk about telling the difference.
Like that one time with the what was it, squirrels or
yes,
raccoons?
let's tell that story. This didn't happen to me. This happened to a friend of mine.
It's just such a funny story.
But a friend of mine in Texas is asked to investigate an apartment. Now, sometime back, there was a murder that took place in the apartment, and ever since, no one lives there for more than a day or two. They all run out, swear the place is haunted. The owners want to rent their apartment for completely understandable reasons, so they asked my friend to get involved. Now, it's San Antonio, which is not the safest city in the United States by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a good part of town either. So she quite sensibly asks a friend of hers to go with her. An ex-Navy SEAL, who's currently was at the time training for search and rescue, and a paramedic. They walk in the front door. They hear weird noises coming from somewhere. Her response was the investigator response. Let's figure out what's going on here. His response, turn around, run out the door, run down the street, screaming like a little girl the whole way home. And they lived down the street. They both lived nearby, so it wasn't very...
So he could literally run home, shouting wee, wee, wee all the way home.
Yeah. But she ultimately figures out what's actually going on. There's a family of raccoons living underneath the apartment. Raccoons make really weird noises.
Yeah, like almost human-like.
Yes, very much so. So you have the story of somebody being murdered there. You have the story of all these people that can't stay there more than a day or two. And then you're just laying there at night and you hear something almost human-like coming from, say, below you or the walls. You freak out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very natural human response.
Yeah, imagination is a powerful thing.
She goes home. She tells the owners, call pest control. You don't have a demon or a ghost. Meanwhile, he's gone home, called their friends, called the cops, told everyone that the house is eating her. She lives almost pretty much directly across the street from this place. She sees red and blue lights on the street, and she goes, what the heck's going on? So she goes outside, sees him from behind, facing the house, talking to the cop. She starts walking out. The cop sees her walking out and goes, can you describe your girlfriend? The guy starts the description. The cop finishes it. How did you know? Boom! Like a little girl. Which is also another basic truth. And another reason why we do the test run, the trial by fire, as it were, is no matter how tough somebody is, you never know how they're going to react faced with a spirit. Because I have the utmost respect for the armed forces, but the reality is when you run into a situation like that, which is outside of everything you've ever trained or prepared for, it can demolish your worldview. And that can be one of the most terrifying experiences a person can have. I have no problem taking skeptics with me on a case. It's just, I don't care how skeptical you are, I'm still going to make you go through the same trial as everybody else. Because if something happens, I need to be sure you're not going to freak on me. because you don't want to freak out your client. So there's the other story I want to tell, and then I want to talk a little bit about the class before we get going, since it's almost 7:30. So the other story is by far the funniest experience I've ever had, and this was a legitimately haunted house. I get called to do a case that's right around the corner from where I live, like 5-10 minute stops. Um, so I go to two investigators, one being our own producer, the other one being a friend of mine, and the three of us head out there. Now, my fiance and I share a car, and she was doing something else at the time. I don't remember what. It's not really relevant to the story anyway, because she is not an investigator, which again is fine. But I needed a ride, so our producer Beth picks me up. But the thing is, first the GPS sends her to the house we're investigating. How she put in my address originally, it got changed somewhere along the way. We get over there, we're walking the house. It's got this feeling to it. Yeah, there's something going on. And the family, we talked to the family, and they were having these experiences. The little girls, I mean, one of the more disturbing parts of the story was how the little girl had a demon appear to her in a dream and tell her that demons could be good. And it started looking out like something demonic and horrible, and then changing to something more angelic looking. We're getting the feel in the house. We're getting some lights in the house. We do some EVP in the house. And it's like, okay, so here's the deal. If we need to get a priest involved, we need evidence, so we're going to do some EVP. But most likely, we're going to nip this in the bud right here, and I'm going to just do a house blessing. Like, okay, well, whatever works. So, so at this point, I had left the holy water in the car. And I turned to Beth and go, could you go grab the holy water for me? Now, the family has multiple dogs, one of which was sitting right next to me on the couch. The moment I say, Beth, could you go grab the holy water for me, the one sitting on the couch jumps up, starts barking her head off, and races across the house to the back door. And the instant she hits the back door, she just calms down. The mere suggestion of getting the holy water chased the demon out of the house. We did the house blessing, went room to room.
It was a very small demon.
So you say it humorously, but yeah, actually, it probably was.
Yeah.
We went room to room. We did the prayers. We blessed everything with holy water. Then I went out to the backyard, covered the backyard because it was the more sensitive members of the team could tell me it was sitting, and even I could kind of tell it was sitting on the electrical wire running over the backyard. It made sure it's like, no, you don't get to stay here either. Go home. And praise God, she hasn't had an issue since. So we're almost out of time, so let's touch on the class itself. So, as I said, the class is a total of 30 sessions, and its main aim is if you want to start doing what I do, this is the sort of thing you need to know. That's not its only purpose. I personally tend to think, and Brian, tell me if you agree or not. I think writers might get something out of this just because of the folklore aspect.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why I attended a couple of when he did these before. I attended a few of them just to listen in and sort of pick his brain.
Another group that I think would find use in this is, like I said, there are groups out there that are very good at investigating ghosts, and you probably, there are classes in here because I'm going to go over like how to do EVPs and things like that you probably already know, but learning how to deal with violent hauntings is something you might not know, and that's another reason to come. To give you an idea, this is meant to be comprehensive. We're going to do the history of the paranormal, and going from modern, the ancient times of Babylon, Sumeria, up into the modern era. Ghosts, angels, and demons, what the difference between them are. We're going to cover the religions of the world. We're going to cover psychics. We're going to cover the ethics of ghost hunting. We're going to actual practical paranormal investigation stuff, critical thinking, and some of the other explanations, how to protect yourself from spirits, conducting an interview on site with the client, how to do the walk through the house, EVPs, photographs, all that kind of thing. There will be an expectation of people writing a paper. There's going to be an expectation of people taking an exam. This will be graded. If you can go to the Facebook group, Ghost Hunting and Demonology courses, and download the class syllabus to get it. Although that's going to get tweaked a bit. This is meant to be a comprehensive course. This is meant to take all the things that in 20 years of doing this, I have personally found useful, and give you as good an overview of it as I possibly can. Another commoner mentioned, and this is also true about people using spirit boxes and some of these things very disrespectfully,
Yeah.
particularly here on YouTube. And we're going to go over that too and why that's a bad idea and controversial idea of provocation and when it is appropriate and not appropriate to use it. Um, there are people that are probably going to look at the syllabus and say, yeah, I only need half of these classes. My advice, and this is going to sound like, I want the money, and I'm not going to say that the money would hurt, but my advice is to take the entire course because you may not think parts like you need to know about obscure Eastern religions that almost no one practices in the United States, but you'd be surprised. Every topic I put in there is based on things I've actually found useful doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the knowledge of folklore can come in handy. If you get a perfect example of where something that isn't traditional Christian demonology or ghost hunting may come in handy, and that's something else I'll get into in a second, is a case that happened in Maryland, country club. Every night they lock up the bar. The next day, all the chairs and tables are pushed into a very specific pattern, as if people are marching around the bar. There was an answer to how to fix that. Oh, actually, multiple answers on how to fix that. And exorcism wasn't the best choice, nor is it the choice that they went with. And that's another type of spirit called fairies. I mean, it's classical fairy folklore. If you know anything about the myths and legends of Ireland and other places that talk about fairies, fairy processionals like that show up a lot. And knowing that could save you a lot of time and a lot of trouble trying to run down a priest when you could just, the way they resolved it was they got the country club to build a beautiful, elaborate garden to give them somewhere else to go. A simpler solution that somebody could have suggested, make a path.
Mm-hmm.
Just give them an area to walk around in. A lot of things you don't think are relevant can be, is my point. So, like I said, first class we're looking at either the last weekend in May, the 25th, or the beginning of June. Amisha just reminded me I have an engagement. I think it's actually the first weekend in June. So it may be the second Saturday in June. First class is going to be $10. So you guys can come, you can hear, you can speak to me myself and decide if this is something you think is worth doing, or you can stream in, because again, we're going to have that option. If you want to do the entire 30 course run, second weekend in June. So it'll be the first or second weekend of June, either the last weekend of May, the 25th, or the first weekend of June will be the first class. So that'll be either May 25th or May 1st. And then or June 1st, excuse me. And then the second weekend of June, we'll have to take a break while I'm out of town. And then we'll continue. Like I said, you can buy them one at a time. You can buy them all at once. You can buy them in bulk, in patches. And you talk to me, and we can figure out pricing for all of that. Ghost hunting and demonology and ghost hunting 101 on Meetup, ghost hunting and demonology classes on Facebook. Links are going to be in the description. We should touch upon our other sponsor, and then we should get out of here for the next show.
Yes.
So, folks, aside from keeping yourself safe from spirits, another thing important is to keep yourself safe on the internet. I think that might be the best lead-in.
That's the best segue we've done for this one, yeah.
And it's a serious issue these days. You've got hackers, you've got identity thieves, you've got people trying to get your credit cards. A really good way of countering that is what's called a virtual private network, or VPN. One of the best on the market is Nord. Nord sets up, you log into their server, and then from there, and it's not, let me clarify for anyone who's listening who's thinking it, this isn't hard at all. It's actually very easy, very convenient. But you go onto their server, and then from there you're going onto the internet, which means you now have military-grade encryption, double encryption, protecting everything you do. Prices are very low. It's as low as, I want to say, $20 a month.
Yeah, that's
lower,
the
maybe.
start. If you buy like a year in advance, it becomes less than $10 a month.
Yeah, you get less than $10 a month if you buy a year in advance, and you get a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you decide this isn't for you, no risk. I use it myself. Chris, our erstwhile co-host, uses it himself. It is a really good program. It's very, very user friendly, very easy to use. I highly recommend checking it out. If you have a link in the description, you can help out the show when you do so, and you'll be glad that you did. That's going to do it for tonight. Remember to check out all the things we mentioned, and if you're broke, and you want to help us out in a simpler way, like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Yes.
We're at 545 subscribers on YouTube. Thanks to each and every single one of you. We love you all.
Nice.
Remember, if we're working on doing the Hot Wings challenge with Chris. We're going to probably do it as a side video just because he can't come into the studio anymore. Remember as well, if we go
and
to...
they don't want us to eat in the studio.
Yeah, also true. If we get to 1,000 subscribers, I'm doing the show in a dress.
Oh, boy. What a treat.
Or maybe we'll just do a poll and it's like, if we get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I'll do the show in the dress. If we don't get to 1,000 subscribers, or if we do it, I won't do a show in the dress.
Yeah, something.
What
like
do you guys prefer?
Yeah, we'll do some.
Should we hold it as a threat, or should we offer it as a boon?
Yeah.
Let us know in the description or in the comments below what you think. I'm not saying I won't do it. I'm just saying if people really don't want me to do it, then maybe I shouldn't. We don't want to lose subscribers over this. But that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all seriously for tuning in. This is Kevin Mears saying good night and God bless.
Brian McKinley saying keep your fangs sharp.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
I'm not mad.
Yeah, no, I think that one.